Hi friends, welcome to the garden. My name is Elias and you're watching Garden Forage. Do you live in an apartment or in the city and you only have a very small and limited space to grow some food? If you have a balcony, you can grow a lot of your own herbs and some leafy greens. In this video, I'll give you 5 crops that will do really well in containers. You can grow them in pots, buckets, whatever you got, you can grow them in. If you're growing from containers in small spaces, I recommend that you plant from seed. That way you can save a lot of money and that your space can be productive for lower costs. Seeds are inexpensive to buy. Sometimes you can buy them for $1, sometimes they can be up to $3. So it depends on what you really want. If you are growing in containers, I recommend that you find pots that are at least 5 gallons in size. Luckily, 5-gallon containers are very cheap. You can buy them at Home Depot or any place like that. Or you can go on Facebook Marketplace and sometimes people give them for free. The second thing you're going to want to do is to get a good potting soil. A good potting soil will have enough moisture retention and it will have plenty of nutrients in it already. But if you want to take it a step further, I recommend that you get potting soil and you mix it with a good compost. The compost that I like to use is made from leaves, fallen leaves. So it's called leaf manure. And all you want to do is combine those two 50-50. So you're going to do 50% of the potting soil and 50% of the compost manure. That will give you plenty of nutrients and nitrogens to grow all the vegetables that I am about to tell you. I am very successful at growing in containers here in my area. I have a large yard, but I also love growing in containers. Growing in containers is very easy and very simple, and it actually makes gardening much easier than growing directly in the ground. One reason for that is that you have to do very little weeding when you start from potting soil and compost. There's not a lot of weeds in those mediums, so you don't have to do a ton of weeding. These are some seeds that I started a few days ago, and you can see that all that's coming up is those seedlings. There's nothing else coming up in this soil, and that is because the growing medium, the potting soil and the compost, are mostly weed free. You can see here there's nothing else growing in this, and when your vegetables start growing, you can tell exactly what they are. However, when you start growing in the ground, you start getting all sorts of weeds. You see this one, there's grass in here, and in this pot here, I filled it up with garden soil. So I just dug up garden soil from my yard and I put in this pot, and you can see here, actually, there's nothing growing in here that I want to be growing. There's only weeds. So if you want to save a lot of time, you can buy potting soil that is already weed free. So as you can see, even though I have plenty of yard space, I love growing in containers because it makes my job so easy. Also, you can put these containers where you want them and you can move them around if you need to. For example, my kitchen door is right over here, and I like to plant all my herbs right here on these pots because I can just walk out of my kitchen and pick up some herbs and throw them right into my cooking. If you live in an apartment, I know it is hard. I lived in an apartment for many years. Over 12 years of my life I spent in different apartments, and every time I tried to choose a unit that would get at least some sunlight. You need at least 4 hours of sunlight to grow some vegetables. If you don't get at least 4 hours, it's going to be a little bit harder, but you can still grow some leafy greens and they don't mind the shade. So when you're growing in containers, you're not going to be able to grow large varieties of vegetables. You're going to be able to grow the smaller varieties and a lot of leafy greens and a lot of herbs. I suggest that you buy cherry tomatoes if you're trying to do tomatoes. Potatoes you can do, but it's really hard to grow potatoes in containers. Or at least you won't get a yield that is promising. But if you grow basil in a 5-gallon container, that will be a significant harvest. You can easily see that the little clamshells of basil at the store are like $3. But if you grow a 5-gallon container of basil, you're going to have more basil that you know what to do with. Or if you cook a lot of basil, then you can do 2 plantings of basil. The other things that you can grow are leafy greens. Leafy greens do really well in containers, and what you want to do is cut and come again methods. So instead of harvesting a whole thing of lettuce, you're going to harvest the outer leaves of the lettuce so that it keeps on growing. So that way you can get continuous harvest for 3 months, even 4 months out of one planting. This is my little planter here, and I grow all sorts of herbs in it. You can see here I have lemon basil, purple basil, more basil, mint, and green onions. And do you know why I love to grow green onions like this in containers? Because you can just clip the bottom right here without ripping it out. Just cut this top here, leave about an inch in the soil. You're going to be able to eat the greens, and this will re-sprout again and it will come back again. In fact, I harvest 1 or 2 green onions from this little container every week, and this is all I need for my green onion consumption. In this bed I also have cilantro and some oregano. This space is only 30 inches wide and about 16 inches deep, and you can see how much stuff is already growing in here, and it does really well. I am a value gardener, so I like to invest less money and get a big crop. So that's why I start everything from seed if I can. Here are my top 5 crops to grow in containers. Number 1 is spinach. It is prolific and it does better in the spring and fall. So right now is a perfect time to plant spinach. I would grow carrots in containers. If you have a 5-gallon bucket, carrots do really well if they have enough space to go deep into the ground. So carrots is another great crop to grow in containers. Number 3 is lettuce. Lettuce does really well in containers, and I think it does so much better in containers than in the ground. My number 4 crop that I would grow in containers is cilantro and / parsley. They both love container gardening and they do so well, and they put out a big crop. My number 5 crop that I would grow in containers is basil. Basil does so well in containers, and it grows throughout the growing season, and it produces so much more than you can eat. A bonus one that I would throw in there is green onions. Green onions are prolific, and if you use the method I told you where you just cut above the ground, you can grow them indefinitely. So you only plant them once and then you get a harvest throughout the year. As you can see here, I have a cheap 5-gallon bucket that I'm planting into, and I'm filling it almost all the way up. I'm leaving about 2 inches of space here because when I water, I can water about an inch and then let the water soak in. Make sure that you make a lot of drainage holes so that the water can come out easily. So here's my container, and I'm going to be planting some lettuce into here and some spinach into this one. And this is going to be great for me and my wife to be eating out of for the next 3 months. I planted these onions about a week ago, and you can see how they are now. Nice and small, but they're going to be ready to eat in about 3 weeks. And green onions are actually perennial to our zone, and they will not die in the winter. This is a little crop of basil I have in here. This is going to be a quick crop because the winter will actually kill this one. But that's okay. We still have until the end of October to eat this basil. I also have some cilantro over here, and this is a week-old cilantro, and this is going to be the cilantro that we eat for the next 3 months. Cilantro is perennial to our zone, and it will grow through the winter. And this is the lettuce that I have. Check out this baby lettuce. I actually saved my own seeds for these lettuces, and for these lettuces, they're kind of too close together. So I will, once they grow a little bit more, I will take out some of here and then plant them around in my other containers. I hope I have convinced you that you can grow some vegetables and some food even if you live in a small space, and even if you only have a small balcony. This space right here is only about 2 feet wide by about 4 foot wide. So you can grow a lot of food in a very little space. Now, if you don't have a balcony, I would recommend that you look into a community garden. There's a lot of cities in the United States that provide community gardens, but there might be a wait list. So look into it right now. That is the fall. Some people are leaving and they're not coming back next spring. Get on that wait list, and hopefully you can get yourself a small little plot of land in a community garden. That is exactly what I did for 10 years when I lived in an apartment. This small balcony was not big enough for me, so I used to rent out a little plot. It was 25 foot by 20 foot. And slowly but surely, I acquired the ones next to me. So at the end of the 10-year period, I had a plot that was 20 feet wide by 75 feet long. And I was a full-blown gardener. I grew so much food that I had to give it away to people because I was growing way too much food. Now I am growing in a suburban lot that is about 1/3 of an acre. And I am growing more food than I could ever imagine, but I'm growing fruit trees as well. So now I am trying to transition into a permanent garden where I am growing a lot of perennials. So if you want to see my journey on how I turned my yard into a food forest, make sure that you're following the channel so you can see the updates on my food forest. And if you're interested about seeing a tour of my first year here on the land, I have a video that you can go watch. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope I have inspired you to start a container garden. Happy gardening, and I'll see you guys on the next time.